Hi, and welcome to another Doom stream tonight. A very special Doom stream. If you follow anything with the Pokemon Twitter stuff and everything, there has been like, sorry, you've probably seen everything with how the reception to Pokemon Trading Card Game Live has been. To say it's been poorly received now would be an understatement, and part of the reason why it's been poorly taken in is, well, between the bugs, the visuals of it, the visuals of it are just absolutely, I'm not going to say atrocious. They're poorly designed. The fundamentals of it doesn't help. If anything, it causes more issues. And looking at that, there's it's something that could be fixed. I don't know how easily it could be fixed with how they've set up their game engine, considering, but the hope is it's something that they'd be able to go and fix in the future. Right now, I would like a more functional game before we get to a visual game if we had to, but knowing the visuals need to be updated regardless is something that should be part of the roadmap. What I'm going to kind of talk tonight is like about breaking down what they've done wrong, and then kind of show you how like a good basic framework, like a good design framework, is what's lacking here and what could help benefit the game. So I've loaded up my basic design programs. This is a very basic screenshot of PTCGL. There's some elements missing, but the basic framework is here. You have your simple 3 layers for the game parts. You have your 1, 2, and 3. They're not equal sized, but that's your your game layers, and you have that on both sides, which is fine, and that works kind of for a widescreen display. But the way they've designed it, though, is again this uneven. This here is like about this big, versus the next layer up is probably about double that size almost. It looks like probably about actually quarter size bigger. And then on top of it, you have everything with the card hand is completely, again, misscaled. So you already have some issues because naturally you want to go through and you want to see those all be the same size. That's fine. Actually, having the middle size be smaller is fine, but when you look at the information that's presented there's nothing. It's very difficult to see what Pokemon's there. It's very difficult to see how everything works. And then on top of it is there's a lack of overlapping elements. So it also doesn't even feel like a natural board state. Like if you've played the game IRL, this doesn't feel natural. Part of that is translating it isn't going to be the same, but it still needs that familiarity. And like one of the complaints I've read is this right here. This Pokemon being the wrong direction. It's looking directly at you, and you can see it, and that actually creates a different problem. That's actually just a visual problem of you're already trained. You're trained to think your Pokemon's looking this way. Your opponent's playing against you. Their cards are all up here or flipped, but they're not here. So there's a little bit of visual continuance, if I believe I'm saying the word right, that doesn't exist. On top of that, I mean, this is weird. So there's plenty of just little problems there. I don't like the stacking of the cards like this. That's just a personal issue. I would probably art direct it away from that. And then the prize count being laid out like that is actually an interesting solution. But when you look at it in the mobile version, this is where the problem is. Like I can kind of understand why they went vertical, but at the same time, a lot of games are horizontal already, and they probably would be easier to design for. So during that time, I came through, I've looked at it, I've thought about it, I've put things together, and like I want to go through like just how I would build this out. So going through knowing what a basic game has, we have we have your basic board. Like if you look at any single game game board for this, the playmats, this is what it is. Is this very simple? So going through, you got your cards. 3 levels. We're gonna measure out the 3 levels real quick, just so we know what 3 levels we have. So see here, that we're at this scale, this card here, it feels almost natural. We actually have some natural spacing between everything. So at this size, if this was designed for a 1920 by 1080 screen, we are looking at cards that are about 200 pixels tall, give or take. I'm actually going to size them down just a little bit to make sure they're at 200. We're going to actually size them down to 175. 175 should be about enough that you should be able to see exactly what's on the card with no issue. So already here, I'm designing for a bigger for desktop. I'm not even designing for mobile. I'm designing for desktop. I'm surprised that they went mobile first. The visuals for mobile visuals are way more restrictive, and you need to be more specialized. And they're trying to make it so it works on both. And it's just not working that way. So as you can even see here, I've already have my 3 layers. Boom, boom, boom. You have your attackers, you have your bench, you have your hand. And I like having the hand cut off a little bit here, where you can see where this blue line is, just because it gives that little bit extra feeling of like a person is holding the cards. Now, if we were to take that card size and look at it like at scale, we'll zoom it to scale here in just a moment. And we'll use an actual Pokemon card to do it. Let's use this Poliwhirl. So this Poliwhirl here is your standard Pokemon card. We'll put it down to 175 pixels. Place it right here by the active slot, and then we're going to zoom this out to the actual size. Oops. It counts as all 3, and chat, I apologize, like if I'm not very active with you tonight. I am going over this, and I will try to answer questions as I go. So this is near scale. This is a little bit more upsized than what I'm doing, so we'll go back one more. But you can see here, this Poliwhirl is easier to read and tell what's there, which is great. Like they already have that in the basic game, your actives. But once I cut it out, so we put it on the bench layer. But as soon as I start cutting out the size of it, yeah, we save space. We save lots of space here. We lose the legibility. I can't tell fully what's there sometimes, because not all art is the same. Not all art's going to have something clear and concise on what it is. You can use let me find a good example of it. Komiya's art. That's it. Komiya's art. He's very, very, very stylized. What's up, Angel Streams? Thank you for the raid. We're going over how to fix PTCGL's visuals right now, and hopefully it will be good. Hopefully your stream went well tonight, and we are going over it now. Just going over some of the problems. So even though this Rotom is actually kind of a poor choice, but some Komiyas are very difficult to see what the art is. So I'm actually looking for a better example, but I like this Rotom one anyways. Here we go. This would actually be, this is a better example. So there you go. Looking at size for that, you can't tell that Alolan Vulpix is Alolan Vulpix. It looks nothing there. So you need the full card set. You need the full card. It usually helps with the visuals, but it also helps tell you what type it is. Because again, look at this. You can kind of see the gold around it. On this Crobat, you can't tell what typing it is until you look in the upper right hand corner. It just doesn't. It doesn't help. It doesn't use the visual language that they've already gone through. So you have the card's visual language already, and they haven't adopted any of it. And you might as well just keep said card's visual language when you bring it in. So here we go. We got our 3 layers. Decent sizing. So we know we can bench up to 5. So we go ahead, just go ahead. Space 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we'll go ahead and center that. So even right there already, we got everything kind of set up. And then we can go ahead and put the hand. One of the things I do enjoy they did with the hands is they curved the hand like you were holding it. That's a very nice visual. But for this exercise, we're not going to curve it. So there you go. That's your basic play area. That is what you would see IRL. And then with this sizing, what we were at, boop, you should be able to tell visually everything that's there. So if I went in and put actual cards into place, you'd be able to tell what's going on and you'd be able to see it, and it would work really well. Just a sec. So that solves one problem, the first problem, like how do we tell if everything's here? But now we still have more items we need to put in. Like how do we make sure we know we're seeing our deck, we're seeing our discard, you know? What's up, everyone coming in from Steuben's stream? We are just actually going over a redesign of a PTCGL. Right now we're going over the basic layout. We have our basic 3 tiers to the game. So we know we have 3 tiers to the game. Now we got to figure out where we're putting in stuff like I gotta remember. I'm gonna have to make sure to edit that later. I'm gonna have to edit this anyways. Subin, thank you for the raid. Yeah, our next issue is where do we place deck and discard. Traditionally, you'd probably just place them over here. Just 1, 2, easy in. Nothing there. Hopefully this will be. So a simple place, easy to find. Nothing too different from what they already have or what's already there for PTCGL. Again, your layout same as anything else. Now the price is where things get tricky. This is probably one of the trickiest parts, and this is where I do applaud them with this. But just how making sure that people know that there's 6 prizes there is going to be the hard thing. You can go classic and just keep it simple. You can just put it over here. Simple prizes. And then all you have to do, add in a counter like this. That gives you space, that gives you flexibility. That gives you a lot of flexibility to anything you do for like other platforms. So that's trying to be prepared for platforms. So as you can see, we already kind of got like our basic layout here. Kind of similar to what our PTCGL has, but nothing that doesn't stray too far. So as basic there. Now here's where the parts get interesting. is where do you put stuff for commands? Like, you need, now you know where your basic game prizes are. Counters on Discord or deck is also a good idea. So we also put that there. The other, and that also solves this accessibility issue with kind of where you're placing things, because if when you put it underneath and you put it in smaller, the current way PTCGO is, or even the way PTCGL is, you kind of have it like the counter here. You just want to be able to see it quickly. Some people would even say to put it right here in the middle. I don't. I would assume to put it here and have it something as you disable. But having those there, so we'll just say, we'll say it's like 45 right now, just again, and then 12. Just call it that. So now that we have our basic game layout, we want to be able to mirror this to the other side. So we'll go ahead and mirror that real quick, so then we know where everything's going on the other side. And I like to try to keep the visual like a real game, so deck, prizes will be on opposite sides of each other. And even with a little bit of offset, you get a little bit more of a visual upgrade there. You get like, oh hey, these don't line up. Like, oh, that's kind of interesting. You can line them up. There's no reason you can't. We might still do that because now the issue we have now, we have our gameplay set out. This is where everything that needs to be. There's nothing else we need on here. Everything that you need to play the game is out. So now you start adding in elements. You start adding elements like we know you need the players' names. We have space over here, so we go ahead and just add in a nice section over here. Boop. Doesn't have to be too much. And there's be player name. Doesn't need to be red, doesn't need to be blue, it needs to be here. Well, that's what we're working on. We're starting out with the most basic things you need to have in a game right now. And then now we're starting with just some extra UI elements. Just to get them in there for right now. Because sadly, as it is, corporate's going to ask about where do you put the player names. They're not going to worry about prizes or anything else. They're going to worry about the player names first. That's actually one of the hardest things. Is it's not just designing for you, and like having people input as I'm working on this is good, because as Jake just brought up, stadiums and Lost Zone. That's stuff that needs to be in the game. It is a game mechanics. Same thing with the V-Stars. But it's just going through and figuring out where at least our basic basic things go. So like if we were to put a stadium in, we already have the nice areas for that. And thankfully, again, we're following how the card game basically works. Is just put them here and put them here. So again, these are all active areas we need. And we haven't still put in like V-Stars, we still haven't put in GX. There's still plenty of other things we need to put in. So the next one, the more important things I would definitely say that needs to be put in is actually where our call to action buttons are. When's your turn done? When do you do things that are done? So I believe that every single thing we put in here is a hot active area already. We can click on that, we can look at it, we can do whatever. The reason why we didn't lay out the prize cards fully, and the reason why I didn't, is a little bit of preparation for mobile. Like I'm trying to get into the mind of how they want to develop it fully. Do I like it having overlapping? Yes, it works really well. But also you do run into accessibility issues that people can't count or see those. Like especially if you have certain people who are colorblind in certain ways or have issues with contrast. Like my wife has issues with visual issues. She cannot count these cards. If this wasn't there, she wouldn't be able to tell. So to save up on space, it's a little bit easier right now. Just put this there. And that also gives us the ability to put one V-star, say V-star marker here, and then GX for expanded underneath. But I don't even know if we'll get expanded anytime soon. And if anyone knows like fully what the rule is on GX and V-star, if you can do both and then expand it, I think you can. That'd be nice to know. Exactly. Right now we're trying to just, one of the things we do when we start as a designer is you try to design the catch-all. You're trying to figure out more of like gets everything going and less about like every single possible thing. And you design bigger and go smaller, and the way PTCGL was designed looks like they started small and tried to go bigger. So you're already seeing as many active areas as we are, and part of the reason why I want to keep this as close to a regular board state. What you would see, you can scale, vector can scale down or up infinitely. This is what a player would see from a board state. It was people would see when watching IRL play. And then on top of that, this was brought up earlier on Twitter discussion as well, angling it, putting it at an angle. That's definitely something that this should be doing, but right now, the basics of this is so broken that I can't even start discussing about putting it in perspective. The layout's so bad that I want to be able to make sure the 2D layout of it works before I do more. And so one of the things I talked about was like lining these up, just giving a nice visual lineup. So we'll definitely move those over and just keep those aligned. And if anything, it might even help a little bit with development process. Like I've had plenty of developers yell at me going, hey, this doesn't line up all the way. I'm like, that's intentional as a designer, and it becomes more difficult. So I would rather have it aligned and make things a little bit easier. And even then you can move these in just a little bit more into the board, and it gives you a little bit more board state to play with. So now this is where the interesting part comes in. Is now that we have our basic board state, our basic layout, just how everything should be looking. What's our next step? Well, this is where now we have to start adding in more UI elements. For sure, we know we need a concede button. We need something for settings. Settings is almost traditionally always in the upper right. Let's make it 75 by 75 pixels so we know exactly what we're getting into. Upper right corner, there's our settings. I'll just put a quick hamburger menu here. Toot. So again, that's where our settings, everything, it's UX traditionally, you keep that in the upper right hand corner. It's just what people know. So this is where it gets interesting. Is like where do you put in your command button? Where do you want that? Like having it here in the lower right hand corner calls back to more back towards PTCGL. That's where it was. How many functions do you want that to have? Is it always just done? Does it always double click? Is it is it where you want to like go away from something or click done for something? That's where user test is going to come in the most. For this thing, we're going to just put in action button here and just keep it in the lower right hand column. Doesn't need to line up with anything. It's just right there. It's in a place. It's the last thing you visually see when you're going through. A person starts up here and they work their way down in a Z-like pattern all the way down. So the last thing you're seeing is the action button, which should be going. The problem you run into, and this is a problem we've run into with PTCGO, is because of how the action button works, sometimes you double click it. It's not the best idea. It causes misplays, it causes bad reactions, it causes everything else. So with this quick build, this quick thing, we have we know now what goals and what we have to set up for a good game board, for a good framework of everything we need. If anybody who knows how to play Pokemon looked at this board, they would part of them probably go, "Oh, that's like PTCGO's," which PTCGO's game board setup wasn't bad. It was actually stronger. It benefits from being as close to IRL as it can be. And the biggest thing with like the action button, as I was bringing up, is something you need to user test. You need to bring in experienced users and you need to bring in new users, and you need to see which each one's doing, and then find out like how they're taking those actions, what it is, because like if we start talking game states here, so let's go ahead and we'll copy this over and start talking some game states. Sec. So perchance, say you're looking at a card up here and it's over the screen, right? It's your middle. Having like the action button right here, and whatever that is, makes sense. But you also have trained users who are used to it in the right hand corner who might not know that. So then, give me a second here. We'll go ahead and fade everything below, just to make it, just so we know that the screen is in a different place. I am literally whipping this up as we're talking. There we go. So that's one action state. I would also blur everything behind there, but Illustrator doesn't like using blur, so I wouldn't blur it. So you can click on it, and there you go. There's your action state. I don't like the way they present the action states in PTCGL because it's at an angle, especially when you're trying to choose a card text. So this is like your inspection one. It's like, cool, I'm inspecting the card. There it is, right? Maybe you can't do anything else. When you're attacking, having it to the side and make it maybe a little bit more visual. Have your stuff there. Still have the cancel button like very prominently. And let's see, let's do this real quick. Let's warp it in. Not that way. There we go. So when you're, that's a different state. You can use that for attack states, you can use it for anything else. It does give you kind of a field look, but at the same time, you get a little bit off center with the visuals. Maybe things don't work as well. You can do it on either side. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's functional. I would prefer to have your actions be more like this, or if you needed to have it more to the side, you can also make them smaller. There's lots of possibilities, and this is again where user testing comes in. I can go to what I know users do versus what and how I expect them to work something versus like what might feel like makes sense. So that's where like we start getting into case studies, and there's a thing I always talk about is if you're good at something, you don't do it for free. And I'm not going to delve too far into the studies because that's something they should be doing. And I don't know, I'm not on their team. I don't know how their team's running it, or who's making the UX UI decisions, and who's interfering with them or directing them. But whoever it is, I don't know if they're going through all these decisions. And are they doing it on a mobile versus desktop or not? And part of it is people intuitively use mobile and desktop different ways. And there's a thing with design where people talk about they go and they see a website and they say, I want everything below the fold. I don't want anything below the fold, I mean. And people intuitively scroll. You go to a website and you scroll. You don't need to see what's above the fold. You will scroll. Go to any site and you will scroll. It's what you've been taught. It's how you know to use these. These are not newspapers. Newspapers is you're trying to catch someone's attention as they're walking by. And you go to a website usually with intention to continue looking through it. And if a person's at a website for less than 2 seconds, they're not going to scroll or look at your thing anyways. They're there just to move on. So like this action button could actually be like up here or down here actually. Keep it on the bottom from it, like cancel action. But I don't know how far they went in with these states, and that's the hardest thing about critiquing the visuals on it. Outside of that, especially the UX, and this is just the game state, that it doesn't read well, it doesn't look exciting, it doesn't look like what you're playing. You play the IRL game, you want to see something similar. Like that's actually a problem I have with Yu-Gi-Oh's visuals. It doesn't look anything like the IRL game, but it does look like the anime. It does look like something that would play from that. And so you almost instinctively associate the visual communications it gives with Yu-Gi-Oh! Still. It doesn't feel far-fetched. But if I threw those same visuals like what Yu-Gi-Oh! Has into a Pokemon card game, it doesn't feel right. But if I throw in like this board, the board itself, the way that this board is with like the Pokeball in the center and this outlining, you can even put in stuff, lines for the text, make that customizable. People will recognize that. People will go to it, people will use it, and they will know how to use it, and then you're not worried about, and new players will get it. And then once new players make that transition, say from being internet players to IRL players, it's an easier transition because they're seeing the same thing. It's not a foreign visual concept to them anymore. And that's the biggest thing, the biggest issue with this is that it's completely gave up the visual language that's been natural for 20 years for this card game, and they've thrown it all out the window. And they're trying to make it work, but it's not. They need to embrace it. And like, it doesn't need to be 2D. This can be angled. Angling makes it more dynamic. It gives that extra little visual thing. You can make it seem very good and still be legible. You push it too far, like the original PTCGL, like 2014, or I think it was 2012 I saw, where it's almost flat and it looks really hard to read my opponent's board. That's an issue. And then we're not even talking still like more card states. Like, okay, what do you do with energy attachments? Do you come in and do you still use like circles? Right. So then you have the circle option, and then like, okay, do you keep stacking them? Then you come into the problem with someone with vision capabilities, can they not see them? Or do you start going and keeping that IRL stuff, and then you start moving cards behind, keeping that peak? As that's not working the way I wanted it to. And like, on top of that, like, they are mixing, like, if they had digital playmats, they have other things. So just even this is just simple things, visual language elements that we already know from IRL play. Maybe some of it's some stuff that people pick up on their own that they can do. This is as close as we're going to get to traditional playmats. IRL. Traditional playmats are 24 by 14 inches. I design enough of them to know. And 1920 by 1080, the aspect ratio is off. So we're not as close. We're just slightly off. And that's the only reason we're using 1920 by 1080 as our jumping off point. Is it is the most common dimensions of displays right now. So this, if you design for 1920 by 1080, you're hitting PC, you're hitting console, and you're hitting some, not a lot, tablets as well. And then on these cards again, it's like, okay, how do we figure out, how do we do the extra cards? Well, you can always come in, have them like this. So different cards have their things, have their attachments. And this is where like you start case studying so much. And it's right, and it is also correct in chat as well, as if you're watching this later. This side of the screen doesn't need to take up as much space. The hand can be pulled back like this. We can pull the entirety of their hand back, and then ours move forward like so, and then we can keep moving, doing that, and then we can adjust whatever visual elements we have there, and these can move up a little bit, and then you still have these kind of cut off. And then there you go, because this space doesn't need as much. But then again, you also still run into the problems of okay, what's their card attachments? What's mine? How do you show that? How do you make sure someone can read that? Like going back to PTCGL itself. Then you go with the circles. That's probably the best thing, but best option they have. But it doesn't work as well on the bench. So I do applaud the PTCGL team for going at this and going through and trying to not even reinvent the wheel. They're trying to do certain things, and going with a circle sometimes is the best option. Like, it's small, it's something that can read quickly. You can find ways of bring it up visually better. But for right now, our problem is it's just not laid out right. It just has issues, and it's hard to see. It's hard to tell what's going on when you look at it from afar. And if you're a seasoned player, you don't see it. It just gets cluttered. Like when they started prototyping this PTCGL, I would have hoped this is where they started, with something like this, very simple, and then work their visuals up. Visuals can be fixed and redone, at least when I did game development. You could have them fixed all the way up until like the day before you go gold. You can fix textures, you can mod textures, you can mod stuff, and those things will work as long as they still fit within how it's supposed to be. So I can still see this being changed, but I don't know how it's been built. There's a lot of possibilities still with it, and I wouldn't have carbon copied PTCGL, but I would have at least used it as a jumping off point. And I do wonder if the community's feedback about PTCGL might have scared whoever was designing and developing it into making something new, something different. And now that we're coming out, no, we wanted it more this way. They could have some confused feedback. Maybe they're changing. I do keep an eye on their job listings, and they are looking for a new game design manager. And I don't know if someone got fired for it or someone left, or I don't know. I have no personal insights into their development team other than what I can see from LinkedIn and going through their job listings. But seeing that listing be posted recently with what's happening makes me feel like somebody didn't like something, and somebody might either got fired or somebody left. Maybe from something happening. I don't know. They've had a lot of new positions open up recently. A lot. And the thing is, like, the numbers on LinkedIn of how many people they employ is actually gone up. So it might actually be more reassuring that they're hiring to put more people in. That's what I feel like could be happening. I like design. I love the card game. I can talk for hours about just even how the design of the cards themselves affect the game, and I should be doing that more. But it's concerning when we get a client that doesn't feel as thought out as it could be, or it feels like there was some sort of meddling at some point. I've had projects where I've designed something like this and it tests well, and a corporate, let's just put it bluntly, a corporate stooge comes in and messes up the whole thing and wants certain things. Like, they don't see the reason why the bench should have its extra text there. They want the half text. And it doesn't matter if you show testing that it's supposed to be this way. You can back up your data. They want it a certain way. And so when that happens, products get derailed. Products become more poor. And it sucks. And I think the PTCGL devs, who are there doing it, is doing the best job they can. And if we had more transparency or knew what was going on, I think if anything, we might not be as angry. But the biggest thing is you shouldn't be taking it out on the devs. Do not take it on the devs. Do not take it on the artists. Take it out on the company itself. We don't know the situations or the work conditions they're going through. Like, here's another good example. The beta that just went through, that is riddled with bugs. That screams to me that someone in upper management pushed it through and didn't listen to the developers. I had a project I worked on at Amazon. It was a complete site redesign and network back end upgrade. It was going from SharePoint 2009 to SharePoint 2016. It was massive. We had something like 3 terabytes worth of information going with it. It wasn't going to be small. The dev said we needed to stop. Something had went wrong. Something had went extremely wrong. It was slowing the site down, and we needed to reevaluate what was going on. Upper management pushed it through anyways. The site didn't work. It crashed. It was absolutely terrible. The devs spent 3 whole days with little sleep, and they couldn't get it to work. And it took a year after that to get it to properly work. We had to hire Microsoft themselves to come in and help fix their product and get it to work. And they called us crazy. We're trying to do what we were doing. And in the end, it took 3 years. I redesigned the logo for it so many times and the visuals. Like, I had to keep updating the visuals because they were outdated by the time we made any sort of progress. So I look at it, and that's my thoughts, and that somewhere something got screwed up. Something got pushed through that shouldn't have been, and now they're getting the backlash. And hopefully that's enough to make whoever's making these choices change their mind. Hopefully this is able to help you kind of figure that out too. Don't be going after the devs. Don't be going after the artists. They probably had nothing to do with like pushing this through. Every dev I've ever met, every dev I've ever worked with is very passionate about their work. Every artist I've ever worked with is very passionate about their work. You don't want to put out a subpar product. I've gone back and redone products as an illustrator, as a creative director. It's what's there. So that's the biggest thing I want people to take away, is not blame the developers or call them lazy or anything else. Blame it all on TPCI itself, someone up higher, someone making some of these decisions. And that what we're doing is what we should be doing. Tell them the product isn't good. Tell them that we don't accept it. Like, if you watch the Zool stream on today on March 29th, he had Tablemon come on and LDF, and they talked about a PTCGL appreciation day or even week. And you know what? That's actually a good thing to say. We appreciate this client is as outdated and everything it is. We still enjoy it, and we still enjoy the game, and this is like the baseline of what we want, and you're not meeting that baseline anymore. So hopefully in the end PTCGL gets better. I really hope the development team can pull it out. I believe in them. I believe in their designers. And the only place we can go from here is up. If